The House committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol is set to resume public hearings later this month.
That's right, but it appears the investigation may be expanding. Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger says more potential witnesses have come forward with new information since the bombshell testimony of former Mark Meadows aide Cassidy Hutchinson. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now for more on all of this. Hi, Scott. So what do we know about the focus of the committee's next hearing?
It's likely to be midweek next week, and I'm told it'll focus on the role of far-right groups, the accused conspiracy groups, on the ground January 6th and in the weeks and months ahead of January 6th. Plotting, planning, raising money, and, according to the prosecutors, raising arms. The far-right groups have been a focus of the Justice Department almost from the start, and the committee has expressed some interest in these groups as well, mentioning them by name during some of the previous hearings, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers. The big question for this hearing: what connective tissue does this committee draw between the far-right groups and anybody else that's been publicly mentioned in these hearings? Do they connect these groups to the Trump inner circle? Do they connect these groups to the White House at all? That's the question that is the underpinning for the next hearing next week.
And Scott, over the weekend, Vice Chair Liz Cheney said the committee could make multiple criminal referrals to the Justice Department, including against former President Trump. Do we have any indication at all, Scott? Is the Department of Justice moving any closer to potential charges?
Well, Elaine, let's reflect upon that, because that's quite something. Over the weekend, members of this committee openly discussing something never done before in American history, making a formal referral for a formal prosecution of a former U.S. president. The question is not whether they'll make this referral, because the committee has already said they believe Donald Trump was part of a conspiracy to defraud the United States. The question is whether they would need to make a referral. We know the Justice Department has been closely monitoring the committee and its hearings and its work. What's more, we know the Justice Department has requested copies of the interview transcripts from this committee. They say they need those transcripts to help with some of their current prosecution. So we know both investigations are watching each other, not collaborating, not working together, but running parallel to each other. It's possible this committee makes a criminal referral to the Justice Department. It's not binding. It's just that. It's a recommendation. It's a referral. But also, it might be redundant because the Justice Department is closely, meticulously following what this committee finds.
And, Scott, you've also learned that former White House advisor Steve Bannon could be throwing himself into the mix. What can you tell us about that?
Tanya, let's not forget about this case. Steve Bannon charged with contempt of Congress for defying the subpoenas of this January 6th committee. Here we are in July, and his trial is now set to begin this month. We know from the court filings and having spoken to Steve Bannon outside of the courthouse earlier in his proceedings, he would like to call as witnesses at his trial members of the January 6th Select Committee, potentially the U.S. House Speaker. We don't see anything definitive from the prosecutors or the court as to whether that be allowable or whether they could push forward with such an idea, but it raises the prospect of a circus-like atmosphere at the trial of Steve Bannon, which will happen amid the January 6th committee investigation, and it will happen within eyesight of the U.S. Capitol at the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., which happens to sit on Capitol Hill.
All right. Well, we'll all be watching. Scott MacFarlane from Capitol Hill, thank you so much.